Venture Deals by Feld and Mendelson. Introduction. Imagine it's 1957. The world is buzzing with the dawn of the space age, but the idea of a personal computer is still science fiction. Two brilliant minds, Ken Olsen and Harlan Anderson, have an idea for a business. They want to build smaller, more interactive computers. They knock on door after door, but the investor community just isn't interested. Computers? They say, even the big companies can't make money in that business. Just when they're about to give up, they find a man named Georges Doriot, one of the first true venture capitalists. He sees the spark. He sees the future. After a few meetings, he sends them a letter. In it, he offers to invest $70,000 in their little company, Digital Equipment Corporation, or December. In exchange, he wants 78% of the company. Now, imagine what you would do. You've been rejected by everyone. And here's an offer. It's a lifeline. But it's also everything. 78%. They took the deal. 11 years later, in 1968, DEC went public. That initial $70,000 investment? It was worth over $355 million. A return of over 5,000 times. It was one of the first venture capital home runs, a story that became a legend in the world of startups. That simple letter George Doriot sent was the ancestor of what we now call a term sheet. But today's term sheets aren't one-page letters. They are dense, multi-page documents filled with a secret language, words like liquidation preference, anti-dilution, pro-rata rights, and protective provisions. It's a language designed to protect investors, and if you, as an entrepreneur, don't understand it, you can lose control of your company, your dream, without even realizing it. For decades, this world has been shrouded in mystery. But then, two venture capitalists, Feld and Mendelson, decided to do something radical. They decided to write the playbook. To pull back the curtain and explain every term, every tactic, and every motivation behind the venture capital deal. They wrote a book called Venture Deals, with the bold subtitle, Be Smarter Than Your Lawyer and Venture Capitalist. And that is the promise I have for you today. For the next little while, we are going to walk through the wisdom of this incredible book. This isn't just for people who want to start the next Google or Facebook. This is for anyone who wants to understand how big ideas get funded, how power is structured, and how the game of high-stakes business is truly played. By the end of our time together, you won't just understand the words on a term sheet. You'll understand the deep human dynamics of economics and control that shape our world. You'll be smarter than you thought possible about a world that, from the outside, seems incredibly complex. So, let's begin our journey into the heart of the deal. Book summary. Before we can understand the game, we have to meet the players. The world of venture deals isn't just a two-person tango between an entrepreneur and an investor. It's a crowded dance floor, and knowing who's who is the first step to not getting your toes stepped on. At the very center of this universe is the entrepreneur. The founder. The dreamer. As the authors remind us, without the entrepreneur, there is no term sheet, no startup ecosystem, nothing. If you are that person, you are the star of the show. And you can't outsource this performance to your lawyer. You have to be in the driver's seat, because this isn't just a transaction, it's the start of a long, and often difficult relationship. Next, you have the venture capitalist, or VC. They are the ones with the money, but they come in many different forms. Think of a VC firm like a pyramid. At the top are the managing directors or general partners. These are the decision makers, the ones who will sit on your board. They have the real power. Below them, you might find principals or directors, who are working their way up. They can champion your deal, but they almost always need a general partner's blessing to get it done. Then there are the associates, often brilliant young minds fresh out of school, who do a lot of the initial research and analysis. They are the scouts, but they aren't the generals. It's your job to figure out who you're talking to. The best way to do that? Talk to other entrepreneurs who have worked with that firm. They'll give you the real story. Then there's the angel investor. These are often successful entrepreneurs themselves, or wealthy individuals who invest their own money in the earliest stages of a company. They are a critical part of the ecosystem, providing that first, crucial seed of capital. But not all angels are created equal. Some are incredibly helpful mentors, others might be less sophisticated and can cause complications down the road. The authors give a piece of advice here that is pure gold. If you have a lot of small investors, like friends and family, try to group them into a single entity. Chasing down 75 different signatures when you're trying to close a deal or sell your company is a nightmare you want to avoid. When all these investors come together, they form what's called a syndicate. And in that group, there is almost always a lead investor. This is the VC who takes charge, negotiates the terms, and helps rally the other investors. As the entrepreneur, your job is to find that lead. And finally, you have the lawyers. A great lawyer, the authors say, is invaluable. A bad one can be a disaster. A great lawyer helps you focus on what really matters, while a bad one will fight over unimportant details, run up the bill, and create tension in a relationship that needs to start on a foundation of trust. Never, ever, let your cousin who's a divorce lawyer handle your venture financing. So, you've got your idea. Maybe you've even built a small team. Now begins the quest: raising money. The first rule, as the authors put it, borrowing from a wise little green Jedi master, is do or do not. There is no try. You have to approach fundraising with a mindset that you will succeed. If you sound like you're just testing the waters, investors will sense that uncertainty from a mile away. First, you need to figure out how much you're raising. The authors suggest a simple approach: don't build a complex financial model that will inevitably be wrong. Instead, think about how much money you need to reach your next meaningful milestone. Whether that's launching your first product or hitting a certain number of users, calculate your monthly burn rate, your total expenses, and give yourself a cushion. If you think it'll take 6 months, plan for 12. Things always take longer than you think. And be specific. Don't say you're raising 5 to 7 million. It sounds like you haven't done your homework. Pick a number. You can always raise more if the demand is there. Next, you need to prepare your materials. This is your arsenal for the journey. You'll need a short, 1 to 3 paragraph description of your business, the elevator pitch. This is the core of the email you'll send to introduce yourself. Then, you need an executive summary. This is a 1 to 3 page document that is your first real chance to make an impression. It needs to be crisp, well-written, and substantive. It should tell a story. What's the problem you're solving? Why is your solution amazing? Why is your team the one to do it? And what's the big vision? Finally, you'll need a presentation, your slide deck. The authors make a brilliant point here: form matters. A well-designed, visually appealing presentation signals quality, especially if you're building a consumer product. If you're not a designer, find a friend who is. It will pay for itself many times over. But the most powerful tool you can have? A demo. A prototype. Something people can touch and play with. The authors say they learn more from a 5-minute demo than they do from a 50-page business plan. It shows you can not just talk, but build. Now, how do you find the right VC? The best way is through a warm introduction from another entrepreneur who knows both you and the VC. It cuts through the noise. But if you don't have that network, do your homework. VCs today have blogs, they tweet, they're all over the internet. Read what they write. Understand what they care about. Don't send a business plan for a medical device company to a VC who only invests in software. It's a waste of everyone's time and shows you didn't do the most basic research. A great rule of thumb the authors offer is this: if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. As you start meeting with VCs, you'll find they fall into a few categories. There are the ones who are clearly interested and want to lead your deal. Great. Engage with them. There are the ones who pass. Also great. Move on. The tricky ones are the maybes and the slow no's. The maybe hangs around, waiting to see if someone else gets interested. Keep them warm, but don't count on them. The slow no is the most frustrating. They never say no, but they never move forward. You feel like you're pushing a rope. The author's advice is to treat these as a no and stop wasting your energy. Your goal is to get to a term sheet. This is the document that lays out the proposed terms for the investment. And once you get one, you enter the most critical phase of the process, the negotiation. This brings us to the very heart of the book. The authors reveal a secret that simplifies everything. After being involved in hundreds of deals, they've realized that in any venture financing, there are only two things that really matter: economics and control. Economics refers to how the money is divided up, especially when the company is sold. Control refers to who gets to make the big decisions. Every single clause in that dense, complicated term sheet falls into one of these two buckets. If an investor is fighting you hard on a term that doesn't affect their economics or their control, they're likely just blowing smoke, or they're inexperienced. This simple lens, economics and control, is your compass for navigating the entire negotiation. Let's start with economics. The first economic term everyone focuses on is price, or valuation. When a VC says, "I'll invest $5 million at a $20 million valuation," what do they mean? An entrepreneur might hear a $20 million pre-money valuation, meaning the company is worth $20 million before the investment. After the $5 million goes in, the company is worth $25 million post-money, and the investor owns 20%. But the VC often means a $20 million post-money valuation. In that case, their $5 million investment buys them 25% of the company. It's a subtle difference in language with a huge difference in ownership. The authors advise you to clarify this from the very beginning. A simple, confident question like, "Just to be clear, you mean a $20 million pre-money valuation, right?" forces the conversation and shows you know what you're doing. The next valuation trap is the employee option pool. This is the slice of the company set aside for future employees. VCs will almost always insist that this pool be created or expanded before their investment, as part of the pre-money valuation. Let's go back to our example. A $20 million pre-money valuation. The VCs want a 20% option pool. If that 20% comes out of the pre-money valuation, your effective valuation just dropped from $20 million to $16 million, because those options are diluting the founders, not the new investors. This is a key negotiating point. You can argue for a smaller pool by coming prepared with an actual hiring plan, an option budget, showing exactly who you plan to hire and what equity they'll need. But the most important economic term, even more so than valuation, is the liquidation preference. This is the term that determines who gets paid first, and how much, when a company is sold. When VCs invest, they don't buy the same common stock that founders have. They buy preferred stock. This preferred stock comes with special rights, and the liquidation preference is the most powerful of them all. In its simplest form, a 1x liquidation preference means that if the company is sold, the investors get their money back, the 1x, before anyone else sees a dime. So if they invested $5 million, they get the first $5 million from the sale. But it gets more complicated. There's a feature called participation. If the preferred stock is fully participating, the investors get their money back first, and then they get to share in the rest of the proceeds with the common stockholders, as if they were common stockholders. They get to double dip. Let's use a simple example from the book. A VC invests $5 million for a third of a company. The company later sells for $30 million. If the VC has a simple 1x preference with no participation, they have a choice. They can either take their $5 million back, or they can convert their preferred stock to common stock and take their 1/3 of the company, which is $10 million. Obviously, they'll choose the $10 million. The founders get the other $20 million. Everyone is happy. But now, let's say the VC has a 1x preference that is participating. In that same $30 million sale, they first get their $5 million back. That leaves $25 million. Then, they get to participate in that remaining $25 million. They get 1/3 of it, which is about $8.3 million. So their total payout is $5 million plus $8.3 million, for a total of $13.3 million. The founders get only $16.7 million. The participation feature shifted millions of dollars from the founders to the investor. This is why the authors stress that you can't just look at the valuation. A higher valuation with aggressive liquidation preferences can often be a worse deal than a lower valuation with clean, founder-friendly terms. In the early days, you want to keep this as simple as possible. Argue for a non-participating preferred stock. It aligns everyone's interests toward a big outcome. Another key economic term is vesting. When you start a company, you're granted a huge chunk of stock. But you don't own it all on day one. It vests over time, typically 4 years with a 1-year cliff. That means if you leave before your 1-year anniversary, you get nothing. After 1 year, you get 25%, and then the rest vests monthly for the next 3 years. Entrepreneurs often see this as a way for VCs to control them. And it is. But the authors point out that it's also a way for founders to protect themselves from each other. What happens if you have a co-founder who leaves after 6 months? Without vesting, they walk away with their entire stake in the company, leaving you to do all the work. Vesting ensures that equity is earned through commitment over time. It's a tool for alignment, not just for the investors, but for the founding team itself. So that's the economics bucket. It's about the price, how the pie is sliced in an exit, and how ownership is earned over time. Now, let's turn to the other major bucket: control. Even if a VC owns less than 50% of your company, they can still have a huge amount of control through specific terms in the term sheet. The most obvious one is the board of directors. The board is the ultimate governing body of the company. It can hire and fire the CEO. It approves the budget. It decides on major strategic moves. The composition of the board is one of the most important control negotiations you will have. In an early-stage deal, a typical 5-person board might look like this: 2 founders, 2 investors, and 1 independent member that both sides agree on. This creates a balanced board where no single faction has absolute control. As an entrepreneur, you want to fight to maintain this balance for as long as you can. But the most powerful control mechanism for a VC is a set of rights called protective provisions. These are effectively veto rights. It's a list of actions the company cannot take without the explicit approval of the preferred stockholders. This list is usually pretty standard. It includes things like selling the company, changing the rights of the preferred stock, issuing a new class of stock that is senior to the VCs, buying back stock, changing the size of the board, or taking on a large amount of debt. When an entrepreneur sees this list, their first reaction might be, "Don't you trust me?" But as the authors explain, it's not about personal trust. It's about good governance and eliminating ambiguity. VCs have a fiduciary duty to their own investors, the limited partners, and these provisions ensure that the fundamental economic and control structure of their investment can't be changed without their consent. The key is to make sure these provisions are reasonable and don't hamstring your ability to run the company day to day. Another interesting control term is the drag-along agreement. This gives a majority of one class of shareholders, usually the investors, the ability to force all other shareholders to agree to a sale of the company. This became common after the dot-com bust, when companies were being sold for less than the total amount of money invested. In those situations, founders and employees, who would get nothing from the sale, would sometimes try to block the deal. The drag-along prevents that. It ensures that if the investors who hold the majority of the risk decide it's time to sell, everyone has to go along for the ride. So, you've negotiated the economics, you've negotiated the control. The term sheet is signed. But to truly be a master of this game, you need to understand the mind of the player across the table. What really motivates a VC? This is where the book pulls back the curtain on how venture capital funds actually work. A VC firm has two primary sources of income. The first is the management fee. When they raise a fund, say $100 million, they typically get to take about 2% of that each year to run their firm. That pays for salaries, office space, and travel. This fee is guaranteed for the life of the fund, usually 10 years, regardless of how well their investments perform. But the real money, the money that drives all their behavior, comes from what's called carried interest, or carry. This is their share of the profits. After a VC firm returns all of the initial capital to its investors, in our example, the first $100 million, they typically get to keep 20% of all the profits above that. Let's say that $100 million fund becomes worth $300 million. The first $100 million goes back to the investors. That leaves a $200 million profit. The VCs get 20% of that, which is $40 million. The other $160 million goes to their investors. This is the key. A 2x or 3x return on an investment doesn't move the needle for them. They are hunting for the 10x, 50x, or even 100x returns, because those are the deals that generate massive profits and, therefore, massive carry. This is why VCs will often push a company to go big or go home. They're not incentivized by small, safe outcomes. They are incentivized by home runs. Understanding this is crucial. When a VC is giving you advice, you need to see it through the lens of their financial model. There's another factor at play: time. A VC fund has a limited lifespan, usually 10 to 12 years. They have a commitment period of about 5 years where they can make new investments. After that, they can only make follow-on investments in their existing companies. This creates pressure. A VC who invested in your company in year 5 of their fund needs to see a return, or liquidity, within the next 5 to 7 years. This can sometimes put them at odds with an entrepreneur who has a longer-term vision for the company. It's not that they're bad people, it's just that their clock is ticking. Knowing all of this, the players, the process, the terms, and the motivations, equips you for the final challenge: the negotiation itself. The authors offer some timeless wisdom here. First, preparation is everything. Know what you want, what you're willing to concede, and what your walkaway point is before you enter the room. This includes knowing your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Do you have another term sheet? Can you bootstrap the company a little longer? Your power in a negotiation comes from your alternatives. Second, recognize that this is not a single play game. This isn't a one-time transaction with a stranger. This is the beginning of a long-term partnership. Your goal is not to win the negotiation. Your goal is to achieve a fair outcome that both sides feel good about, so you can build a great company together. Reputation is everything in this small world. The best leverage you can possibly have is competition. If you are lucky enough to have multiple VCs interested in your company, you can orchestrate a process where you drive them all toward giving you a term sheet around the same time. This puts you in a position of immense strength. But the author's caution: never lie or overplay your hand. If you get caught, you'll lose all credibility. Finally, the book touches on the other term sheet an entrepreneur might encounter, the letter of intent, or LOI, to acquire your company. This is the document that kicks off the process of selling your business. And just like a financing term sheet, it's all about economics and control. The price is rarely just a single number. It might include an escrow, which is a portion of the price held back for a year or two to cover any unforeseen problems. It might include an earnout, where a part of the price is only paid if the business hits certain targets after the acquisition. And it might include a management retention pool, which is money specifically set aside to keep you and your key team members around. All of these things affect the actual cash you and your investors will receive. The structure of the deal also matters. Is it a stock deal, where the buyer acquires your entire company? Or is it an asset deal, where they only buy the parts they want, leaving you with a corporate shell to clean up? The principles are the same. Understand the details. Focus on what really matters. And negotiate for a fair outcome. Commentary. As we step back and look at the entire landscape that Brad Feld and Jason Mendelson have laid out for us in venture deals, one powerful theme emerges, and it's not about money. It's about relationships. At its core, a venture deal is not just a financial transaction. It is the beginning of a marriage. It's a long-term, high-stakes partnership between entrepreneurs and investors, bound together by a shared hope for the future. And like any successful marriage, it requires trust, transparency, and a deep alignment of interests. The true genius of this book is that it demystifies the complex legal and financial language of deals so that entrepreneurs can focus on what truly matters: finding the right partner. The valuation, the liquidation preference, the protective provisions, these are all just tools. They are the clauses in the prenuptial agreement. They matter, and you need to understand them to protect yourself. But they are not the relationship itself. The book teaches us that the best investors aren't just a source of capital. They are mentors, connectors, and partners who are there for you not just on the sunny days, but on the stormy ones too. And you can often tell what kind of partner someone will be by how they negotiate. Do they act like a bully, trying to win every single point? Or do they approach it as a collaborative process, looking for a fair, win-win outcome? The negotiation is a preview of what it will be like to sit with them in a board meeting when things get tough. So, what can you do with this knowledge today, even if you're years away from starting a company? First, start paying attention to the language. The next time you read a tech news article about a startup raising a Series A round, you'll know what that means. You'll understand that the valuation they mention is only one part of a much bigger story. Just familiarizing yourself with the glossary in this book puts you ahead of 99% of aspiring entrepreneurs. Second, start thinking in terms of economics and control. This is a powerful mental model that applies to almost any partnership or agreement in life. Whether you're joining a club, starting a project with a friend, or even taking a job, ask yourself, what are the economics here? How is value created and distributed? And who has control? Who gets to make the key decisions? Thinking this way brings incredible clarity to any situation. And third, and perhaps most importantly, understand that this journey is a marathon, not a sprint. The authors emphasize that the leaders of a startup community must have a long-term commitment, at least 20 years. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's about building something meaningful and lasting. It's about creating value, solving problems, and contributing to a community of like-minded builders and dreamers. That was a deep dive into the core ideas of venture deals by Brad Feld and Jason Mendelson. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the players on the field to the secret language of the term sheet. But I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you hold the book in your hands. It's in the quiet moments, when a particular example or a simple phrase clicks into place and gives you a profound sense of clarity. This journey we took today is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about has sparked your curiosity or resonated with your ambition, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see the world of business and your potential place within it. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, and you're excited to explore more of the incredible books on the Billionaire's Bookshelf, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.